Hey everyone, Suri here, and welcome back to another week of Anima Season defense matches. I didn't end up making any changes to the defense this time around. It's been doing really well lately, and I don't see any reason to make any major changes to it just yet. It's hard to engage on this team thanks to the save skills of Edelgard and Felix, and Eliwood's rally, combined with two dancers, gives him a lot more reach than people might expect. Saros in her bonus week is also a significant threat, even if she's only using Distant Guard for her seal and C slot. She's still a lot harder to deal with than usual, thanks to the extra stats. And Rashot herself is just very hard for any tank to deal with safely. The Order's buffs from Dorothea and Mirabilis also do a lot of work for the team's mobility, and overall it keeps the team working fairly well. It was a bit of a bumpier week than usual. I say that with almost a full wall of successes, and only 2 failures, both of which secured at least 1 knockout. So, even with those showing up, I'm still very happy with these results overall. And it's good to see. So let's get to the first match. This match was a fun way to start the week. They brought along a maxed out Farsave Hector, complete with summoner support, all his dragon flowers, Farsave, special fighter bonfire, and they're backing him up with an almost maxed out, I guess if you don't count the summoner support, Lynjas. With a Flame as their third support, this team can probably crack open just about anything pretty easily. Hector prevents any ranged units from hitting his allies, and Flame's damage reduction is very strong for him, while Lynjas can really clean things up on the following turn after the engagement. And plus 10 Reagan and Plumeria are really fun to see too. They get things started right away here, just breaking the forward structures and moving Hector in to bait the team out. They may have overestimated his ability to handle Rashot, though. And once she sweeps him and turns off his healing and ability to counterattack, it's very easy for Saros to move in and finish him off. From there, Eliwood gets danced and can move in and take down Flame, which gives him a Gale Force and easy access to Lynn. He can't actually knock Lynn out here, she's a little too fast for him, and this is one of the reasons I'm considering a wall for him instead of lunge. But losing those two is still enough for them to surrender and move on. This match was fun to see and a little sad to see at the same time. They brought along a Fallen Edelgard who's pretty prevalent on offense teams. She's very strong at just Gale Force options and being very tanky, but this maxed out Winter Felix was the real treat of the team. They've also got a legendary Crom in his in-season bonus week and a Furum for isolation support. Altogether, I do think this team is very solid and can probably crack open a lot of different defenses, thanks to the options they have between Felix and Edelgard and Crom. On the other hand, it's always a little sad to see someone lose a match when they don't have any escape ladders left, especially this early in the week. They take a turn to set up and get Edelgard transformed before sending her in to fight our Edelgard. She doesn't have the best time of it though. Since she's using Gale Force, she doesn't really have enough punch to really break through Brave Edelgard, and ends up just trying to tank this from the defense tile on the following turn. She did take enough damage from Edelgard, though, for Sarah's to come in and finish her off, even on the defense tile. And then our dances come through. Our dance comes through. And our Felix gets to jump forward and attack into their Felix. He gets a good chunk of damage done, but can't quite finish him off. From there, they flip their Felix forward, which gives Kron enough attack to one-shot our Felix. And then Felix can pick off Mirabilis as well.
Do I look merry?
At this point, though, they are very far forward and vulnerable to Eliwood moving in and knocking down Altina. While Felix is not actually going to have good time tanking a Edelgard. Rashok can sweep Crom pretty easily here, but she can't quite finish him off without being able to double. And unfortunately, that also gets Dorothea baited forward. But in this case, it's actually alright, since Dorothea has enough speed to take Fiorm down. Need to get one last shot in here, using Crom to take Dorothea down, but at this point the match is pretty much over, and at that point they surrender and move on. It's interesting to see Fallen Edelgards back to back like this, but like I said, she is a pretty popular and strong option for offense teams. Backing her up with this Lysithea is an interesting idea. I haven't seen a whole lot of Lysithea on offense teams, and I think that's just because she has problems securing multiple knockouts in a single turn. But she's still very good at securing a knockout on one specific key target, which is usually enough for a tank like Fallen Edelgard to come in and clean things up afterwards. Having a Dancer for support is important for something like that, and Raken's a great option for being a second way to snipe a key target and run. They spent some time getting set up here, I think mostly just to let Edelgard transform and move Raken up to be able to attack our Edelgard. But I think they ended up having to readjust their strategy once they realized that Raken can't actually knock Edelgard out. Unfortunately, baiting from here is always a little risky, since Eliwood gets to dance forward and get on top of Edelgard. The Wings of Mercy does backfire here, sadly. And Dorothea ends up attacking into Lysithea and not really accomplishing too much. And with both dances used, the rest of the team can't quite make it into range. So it makes it easy enough for Lysithea to take Dorothea down. And then Raken takes out Eliwood.
This is it for you.
Before Edelgard moves in and uses her bonfire to knock out Ceres. Actually came very close to not making it there, but getting a knockout on Ceres like that in her bonus week is really impressive. From here though, things start going a little less well. Rashot's now in range to attack Edelgard, which gets her a very easy sweep. And then she gets danced and takes another shot. And 2 attacks from Rajat is enough to wear down just about any tank. Edelgard's no exception to that. And once she's down that far, it's easy enough for our Edelgard to move in and finish the job. And then that gives Felix a nice easy warp point to snipe their Reagan. And with those 2 out of the picture, it's enough for them to surrender the match. This was another fun match to see play out. They brought along a Brave Ike and Brave Lucina combo, which is a bit of an AR classic. While I do think Brave Ike has fallen off a bit lately, especially in the face of things like Legendary Sigurd and Duo Leaf, I do think he's still a very capable tank in the right situations, especially if you can back him up with Lucina and isolation support on top. It's a pretty capable team. Even at low merges, Ike can really still do a lot of work, again, against the right teams. And they take a turn just to break the panic manner and get ready to start the fight. Once they've done that, they can move Ike into position to bait things out. And with Mirabilis isolated, this is a lot less risky for him, since Dorothea actually just gets baited and won't actually dance Eliwood. Which actually stops a lot of the threat that would usually deal with Ike from reaching him this turn. Felix doesn't get himself knocked out here. He's fast enough to avoid getting doubled, and with quick riposte offline, Ike can't finish him off. But he can get Rajat down, thanks to the Null Sea Disrupt. And the rest of the team can't quite make it in range, which makes it easy enough for them to start picking things off this turn. The adaptive damage from Reagan lets her get through Felix's defense, and they spend the rest of the turn retreating here since Ike is pretty low on health and needs a bit of a heal before he can do much more. They set this up pretty well. I think they were hoping for Eliwood to get danced and not be able to reach anything, since, again, Dorothy is easy enough to bait forward with Plumeria. Unfortunately, where Eliwood rallied from meant that Mirabilis couldn't actually dance him until Seros moved. And once Seros moves, she's the only one who's actually threatening a unit, which means that she gets the priority on a dance, and gets to pick up Plumeria very easily. Reagan can finish Dorothea off, while they continue trying to push for the win here. But they have a bit of a harder time than they might have expected taking down Seros. Ike can get a solid chunk of damage in, but without a Dancer or Dragon effectiveness to help him break through, he can't finish her off, and Fjorm's not getting much done either. Which means she survives and gets a pretty solid hit in to finish off Reagan. That position lets Edelgard warp forward and take down Naga. And while the rest of the team can't actually make it in range, they're in a pretty tough situation here and decide to surrender and move on. This match was the first failed match of the week, which is always a bit awkward to see, but this isn't one that I think I'm going to be too worried about overall. They brought along a very impressive team though, with a Fallen Edelgard backed up by a legendary Chrom, and 4 mythics to support them. Chrom in particular is, especially in his bonus week, someone that I was a bit worried about, and still am at the moment for my Dark Season defense, since he's effective against most of my defense team, and can really do a lot of damage to it in the right hands. Especially when they also have an unsniped bolt tower to work with. They spend a turn just getting Edelgard transformed here before dancing her forward and starting the fight. While she can't get too much damage done to our Edelgard here, using Bonfire does mean she can one-shot the remainder of Edelgard's health on the second attack. And from there they just let her tank things out on the defense tile. Unfortunately for them, as usual, Rashad is a very effective answer to Edelgard's nonsense, and even though she doesn't get any damage done directly on the first hit, turning off her ability to counterattack and heal leaves her a lot more vulnerable to follow-ups from Eliwood, who gets danced forward and secures an easy knockout on Plumeria. Sadly, he doesn't get to Gale Force here, since the special fighter from Edelgard slows it down. But Cerus does get to step forward and take a very large chunk out of Edelgard's health. And without the healing, it's enough for a shot to step in and finish the job. They do decide to keep going here, and with the bolt tower hit, it's pretty easy for them to start cleaning things up.
I don't think so.
Reagan can take out Eliwood without any problems. And Naga can move in and finish off Felix. This is actually a pretty good move, since they can move it Chrom in next and pull her to safety, before having him move over and take down the rest of Cerus's health. I think, though, that they may have underestimated Rashad a bit here, since it's actually very easy for her to sweep Chrom as well. And even bonus week stats aren't going to keep him alive after she gets danced, and gets to hit him again for free.
You're still here?
I'm sorry.
Sadly, Mirabilis does get baited forward by the Altina, and even though Altina can't actually counterattack her here, she's still bulky enough to survive. She can also take Mirabilis down, but they are in a bit of trouble here since they can't actually reach Rashad. So I think this was actually a deliberate sacrifice at this point, since Altina's never beating that wind sweep check. And they just pull Reagan and Naga out of the way of any follow-up. From there, it's pretty easy for Reagan to actually take Rashad out of the picture. And they move Naga in too, to make sure they can finish Dorothy off next turn. Dorothy is not quite able to bring Reagan down. And they take a 50-50 on the heavy trap to pick up one of the Aether pots at least, before letting Naga close out the match. I'm not really too worried about this loss. It's a very messy loss overall. This match was a fun one to see, just for the display of highly merged premium units that they brought on their team. While their Hector is only +7, they do have a very impressive maxed out legendary Lilina, along with a maxed out bonus week Crom. And a maxed out legendary Byleth, who's particularly fun to see since it's pretty rare to see a maxed out legendary so soon after their debut banner. And they're backing all of that up with a maxed out Plumeria and a maxed out Reagan. Altogether, I don't think this team has many difficulties handling anything they run into. There's a pretty incredible amount of firepower on the team between Byleth and Lina and Crom. And with Hector to intercept any ranged units or melee units that get close to them, there's not a lot that's going to break through this. They take a couple of turns just moving into position before they have Byleth take out Felix.
I will protect you.
And it's easy enough for him to do. Smiting Crom forward gets him in position to handle Eliwood later, while Lina moves in first and takes down Edelgard. It's actually very close. But without Felix to screen her, it's not like that she's going to have too many problems winning. Byleth gets danced and can take down Saros. Before Crom moves in to finish off Eliwood. And then they finish it off by pivoting Hector forward to cover Crom and Lina. I do think they expected Hector to take a couple of hits here. Even though he can't counterattack Rajat, she can't break through him with only 1 or 2 hits. Unfortunately for them, Dorothy is the one who moves in to dance first. And that means that Rajat's still in range of being danced by Mirabilis. And the third attack is enough to finish Hector off. They decide to push forward for the win anyway here, and it's pretty easy to clean things up at that point. Crom can finish Rajat off, and Byleth can take down Dorothea.
Here is something to believe in. You cannot stop the flow of time.
And then they pick up the Aether pots, one at a time. Lina barely survives Mirabilis here. It's a bit unfortunate to see that, but it's okay. This is a pretty messy clear already for someone with this many marches on their mythics, and they actually end up losing 30 lift total from this since they're not using Naga as a bonus. Overall, I'm not too worried about this loss. It is always nice to bounce back from 2 losses in a row this time with a successful defense, and this was actually against one of the people who watches the channel, which makes things a little more fun. They brought along a pretty heavily invested Lina here and backed her up with 2 Plumerias and a Fjorm for isolation. It's a pretty solid hit and run approach, I think. Lina's usually able to break down just about anything she attacks into without too many problems thanks to her pre-charged special and being able to recharge it very easily. And having 2 dancers and isolation makes it pretty easy to pick off a key target or 2 and retreat past the range of where a defense can chase. Especially with Reagan helping out with Kanto on the side. Unfortunately, we do get to snipe their bolt tower here. And without it, it's a lot harder for Lina to actually break through Felix, or for Reagan to handle Edelgard at all. Once they've set up and gotten into position, they have Lilina attack into Felix anyway. Windsweep lets her survive the combat, but she can't quite finish Felix off here. So instead they pull back and retreat out of range of the defense, and try to find a better angle on the next turn. Eliwood's rallies actually end up being a little awkward here, since he ends up rallying for Mirabilis as well, and he doesn't really get anywhere this turn. Which means that Rajat ends up out of range of Edelgard's saves, and Reagan can move in and pick her off easily enough. Without her special though, Lilina has a much harder time securing knockouts on anybody, and they try to retreat out of range one more time. This time though, we have unisolated dancers, and Eliwood rallies forward and picks up Plumeria. Ceres moves next and gets danced, which gets her a pretty easy attack into Lilina. And those two knockouts are enough for them to surrender the match and move on. This was another fun match to see. It's pretty rare to see people fight all the way to the last unit, but every now and then someone decides to go for it. This Inns is actually really impressive. He's nearly maxed out. I think they're probably just waiting for the last copy from the codes in a few months. And they're backing him up with a legendary Byleth, Fjorm, and Tethys for dancing. I think this is another pretty solid hit and run team. Inns and Byleth, and Reagan too, offer a lot of different ways to crack open key targets. And Fjorm's isolation, and being able to canto in and out with Reagan and dance as well, helps a lot for pulling back out of range of the defense afterwards. They take a couple of turns moving into position here. They might have been hoping that Inns would be able to crack Felix open, but they do need to use Byleth to do it.
Here is something to believe in.
And with Felix out of the way, they pull Byleth back and have him pull Inns back. They don't quite retreat far enough, though, and Eliwood rallies forward and gets to pick up an easy knockout on Reagan.
Not good enough.
Sadly, he doesn't get to Gale Force here. Both of his targets let him actually just one-shot them, so we don't get a second knockout this turn. Rajat gets to warp forward and attack Tethys, but that's not really going to do too much without follow-up. From here it's pretty easy for Inns to pick off Eliwood,
Is that all you can do?
and then they can dance him, smite him forward, and pick off Mirabilis as well.
Know your place.
But then they pull back, top Tethys off, and prepare to weather the remainder of the team. They may have underestimated Rajat a bit here, though, and she handles Byleth pretty easily. While Ceres gets to warp forward and remove their dancer from the equation.
The Dark Rider is coming.
It's pretty easy for Inns to pick off Ceres here, thanks to the Dragon Slaying buff from Naga. But Fjorm can't quite finish Rajat off. And Naga's not in range to get much done here. Rajat actually gets to move in and secure another knockout on Naga this time. Before Dorothea moves in and takes down Fjorm. It's a bit unfortunate that she moved before Edelgard here, but I think it's just because she actually did more damage to Fjorm than Edelgard could do to the remainder of Vinz's health bar. And Edelgard can't get in range this turn. Inns can pick off the last of Rajat's hit points, but that's all they can get done before Edelgard moves in and bonks him on the head.
How can this be?
This was another fun match to see. It features a combo that I've thought about and talked about a little bit, but haven't actually seen in action yet, with a Fallen Edelgard and Lilith. I do think that the two of them work really well together. Edelgard tends to get very deep into enemy teams thanks to her built-in Gale Force, and Lilith never has a problem catching up to her support partner, which together lets them really take enemy teams apart if you can pick the correct targets. Lunge is a bit of an odd pick for Lilith's B skill though. I don't know how well that works out for them, but I could see it doing some work. Just pulling enemies out of formation and giving Edelgard access to different targets. They take a turn to set up here, just letting Edelgard transform first, and then smite her in to start going to work. They have to attack our Edelgard first, just to try and take her off the table. And while their Edelgard can't quite manage it, she can bring Edelgard's health low enough for Reagan to finish the job.
Just like Fafnir.
And then they have her retreat and attack into Ceres. This would normally take Ceres off of the battlefield, but not in her bonus week. Ceres survives and gets healed by the healing tower, and well, once again, Rajat gets to sweep an Edelgard and turn her threat completely off, which lets Ceres move in and secure a pretty easy knockout.
My path ends here.
Rajat gets danced, but she can't quite make it into range of anybody else this turn. Eliwood, on the other hand, after getting rallied, can move in and Gale Force through Altina.
But how?
Before picking up Plumeria as well.
I knew it.
And with half their team down, that's enough for them to surrender the match and move on. This match was a fun way to go into the end of the week. It's a bit of a throwback to the first match with a maxed out Hector, but this one is using near save instead of far save. And a maxed out Lynn, who's also got a summoner support. As bodyguards and alternate offense partners for this Nullsea Disrupt Micaiah. They've also got a +10 Naga on the side. along with Reagan and Plumeria. This is actually a really neat twist on the usual Brave Hector approach, and I do think he's actually a very good near-save candidate. He could probably use a different A-skill though, since Ostian counter only provides him with a bit of extra defenses, and you could get a lot more value out of something like Close Defense 4. But it's still easy enough for them to shuffle forward and have Micaiah snipe Felix to start the fight. And pull everybody out of range, except for Micaiah and Hector. Unfortunately though, Micaiah can't quite finish off Rajat in one round of combat here. And even though she does have Null Sea Disrupt, picking off Felix leaves her pretty exposed. As well as getting Hector flashed, which means Ceres can just attack into him and take him out. And with Hector down, it's very easy for Edelgard to step over and clunk Micaiah. From there we can't reach anything else, but losing their front line like that is enough for them to surrender the match. This match was a fun way to close out the week. While the seals on some of their units are a little odd, and I think they might have forgotten to switch this over from a Pawns of Loki set, the maxed out Brave Hector and the maxed out Duo Idunn are both really impressive to see. Idunn in particular is a unit I would have loved to have in my barracks, but she didn't want to turn up on her debut banner, and I haven't been able to really pull together the orbs to pull for her since. Backing these two armors up with Flame is a great way to just let them tank their way through entire enemy teams, even without save skills. There aren't many units that can actually punch through the Hector and Idunn at all. They get things going immediately, just moving forward with Hector and Idunn and plonking Flame behind them. Which, well, might not have gone as well as they'd have liked. Rajat actually doesn't get to jump in and attack immediately, thanks to being body blocked a little by the dancer. But Eliwood still survives to lunge Hector, which gives Rajat a perfect opportunity to disable counterattacks on both armors, before Ceres moves in to clean Hector up. Rajat gets danced here, and while she does get a safe attack against Idunn, it isn't really going to accomplish much. Idunn's very bulky. And sadly, Felix is just barely not fast enough to punch through Idunn's Worry effect. But losing Hector is still enough for them to surrender the match. Overall, it was another really solid week of defenses for the team. I'm glad it's holding up so well, even with a couple of questionable matches halfway through the week. I think the team's in a pretty good spot still. It's good to see. I do have a Discord link in the description if you'd like to hang out and chat, and there's also a Patreon page if you'd like to help support the channel. As always, I hope you've enjoyed the video, good luck with your own matches, and I'll see you next time.